Hello and welcome back to my humble show. I'm going to be skipping the rest of my intro though because I want to make this as short of a show as possible. I have to go back to work soon. I'm on my lunch break right now as per usual. I tried to record this show last night, but things did not go my way. And since it's my way or the highway, I'm going to try again. I'm going to be talking about Joe Biden and something that he said yesterday about today. Well, not necessarily about today, but about what happened, or shall I say didn't happen, 22 years ago today, on September 12th. So yesterday, Joe Biden was in Alaska, and he was giving a speech about, as you can see here on my wall, 9/11. And he claimed that he had been at Ground Zero the day after, during the aftermath. All right, so first of all, he broke from tradition. He did not visit Ground Zero, any of the sites, any of the scenes. But I guess it's up to you to decide whether or not you are okay with that. Sometimes traditions are carried too far, but it's the most significant thing that has happened in terms of invasion, at least, in modern history. Or shall I say, in terms of attack, because we have an invasion going on right now at the southern border, but I wouldn't call that an attack. That's a little bit different, a lot different. But I mean in terms of mass terrorism, if you want to call that mass, well, thousands of people dying, that fits the script. And no, I'm not going to get any conspiracy theories going here. I'm not going to play any of them or play along with any of them. I just want to cover this one particular topic or, talking point from Joe Biden. His latest talking point, whether intentional or not, he lied. And I suppose by definition of the word lie, it is intentional, right? To what extent, though, I'm not sure. And you can tell me, let me know in the comments below what you think, what you know. Feel free to disagree with me on anything I say. If I seem exhausted, that's because I am. I am an epic failure sometimes. I was up until 3 o'clock trying to record this show. And like I said, things did not go my way. So here we go. Starting with this headline, or at least fact check from Snopes, surprisingly. All right, so here at the top, you see the caption, Biden says he stood at Ground Zero the day after 9/11. According to all available evidence, then U.S. Senator Joe Biden was in Washington, D.C. on September 12 of 2001. So fact check false, in other words. Oh, man. Considering his lies of late, this is no surprise. I mean, he went to Maui, finally, after all of his vacations were finished, and he stuck around just long enough, for a few hours, that is, to compare what happened in Maui to a kitchen fire of his, which he exaggerated. And maybe he wasn't necessarily comparing. Maybe he would have himself said, maybe he did himself say that he wasn't trying to compare the two things, but that doesn't change the fact that he went there and told that story, that exaggerated story, in a way that felt like a comparison. A mocking comparison. Not saying that was his intent, but it is a mockery, if you ask me. So then he after talking about that and talking about his own loss, which is sad, but it is his own loss nevertheless, and a pitiful attempt to make everything about him. He then took that same story about the kitchen fire, to Florida. Yeah, he told it again, even after the bad publicity. So this seems like yet another example of him tying himself to particular topics in ways that just aren't accurate. So either he is making it up in the spur of the moment, not caring whether or not it's even true, Or he just can't remember. In which case he's still just making it up since he can't remember. Or I suppose it could have been something that he preemptively planned. He went there intending to tell this tall tale about him allegedly, falsely, being on the ground. Ground zero, 9/12. As for the rest of this, a very brief article from Snopes, this fact check. The claim, then U.S. Senator Joe Biden visited Ground Zero, the site of the fallen Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, the day after 9/11. The rating is false. The context is, in a September 11, 2023 speech commemorating the terrorist attacks of 9/11, Biden said he visited the ruins of the World Trade Center at Ground Zero the day after the attacks took place. The evidence says otherwise. I just had a thought about the aforementioned current invasion of the southern border, which has made its way all the way to New York and is now prompting Mayor Eric Adams to speak out very emphatically, despite having touted the sanctuary city status of New York City previously. But that's a whole nother ball game. Speaking of other ball games, I want to talk somewhere along the way about Kevin McCarthy's latest announcement about looming impeachment inquiry. But yeah, on with this particular show for now. My cat is trying to decide whether or not to jump up in my lap. He is a distraction when he does that, so I'm kind of crossing my fingers. All right, Charlie, you talked me into it. It's difficult because he has to lay on my arms, or at least one of them. An arm which I need, and now he's hitting buttons. Oh, my goodness. Pulling my cord. All right. It'll work out. You can't see him. Now you can, but he's here. Anyways, where was I? Sorry, I'm going to push through this, though, regardless of how smoothly it's going. A little bit of backtracking here. Biden visits Vietnam to bolster alliance confronting China. Human rights activists criticize Vietnam's record as president seeks to rally nations against Beijing. Yeah, before he was in Alaska, he was in Vietnam. Before he was there, he was attending this G20 summit. And I don't have too much to share on that. Last night I had a certain section of this highlighted. I think this is it. I'll go ahead and speed read this. The 24-hour stop here, which follows Biden's trip to New Delhi to attend the G20 summit, also marked the first time that Biden, who has visited dozens of nations and whose generation was bitterly divided by the Vietnam War, set foot in the country. He didn't serve in the war and was never part of the protest movement, saying at one point, "I wore sports coats. I'm not big on flak jackets and tie-dyed shirts." There's a link here. I'll click on it momentarily. Actually, I have it pulled up in a separate tab already. The caption for that reads, "He didn't fight, he didn't protest. Now Biden visits Vietnam." Somewhat irrelevant to the discussion, but more context. But he is also in some ways bringing the United States closer than ever before to Vietnam with the announcement of a comprehensive strategic partnership that will link the countries diplomatically to a greater extent. I don't even know if you can read that sentence, so not sure how comprehensively strategic of a partnership it is. But sure, keep shipping him out. Better than him staying in his basement or on a beach somewhere. Well, maybe it's not, actually. Considering how on the world stage he pales in comparison to, well, your nearest corpse. So here's this link right here. Another Washington Post article. Washington Compost, of course. Let me get this ad out of the way. Headline reads, Biden didn't protest for fight in Vietnam. Now he's making a crucial visit. Biden, who largely sat out his generation's defining conflict, could cement the U.S.-Vietnam alliance. I wonder what he would have to say about that, because according to him, he was involved in pretty much every movement that ever existed. You know, especially when it comes to civil rights. He loves to claim that he was involved in the civil rights movement, that he was out marching or something like that, whatever he wants us to believe. Joe Biden once explained his lack of interest in the Vietnam War protest movement, for many, the defining cause of his generation, with a simple answer. Catch the key word there, once explained. Many things which he once explained he'll no longer talk about, because it's a bad look for him. But maybe that's just a talking point of mine. Just seems to be a bit of a trend for him, especially when it comes to his cognitive capabilities. You know, he used to talk about how his aneurysms, his brain surgeries affected the speaking portion of his brain. Now we're just supposed to believe that he just has a stutter or something like that. I wore sports coats. You're looking at a middle-class guy, Biden told reporters in 1987. I am who I am. I'm not big on flak jackets and tie-dyed shirts, and, you know, that's not me. But who knows if he knows what he's talking about, like ever? Who knows if what he's saying is true, if not for the good fact checkers over at Snopes. I wouldn't rely on them too much. In fact, I wouldn't trust Snopes any more than I would trust Joe Biden. That's saying something. There's some more information below here. A bit more of an explanation on the situation. But I think I can skip past all of it because it is going to be spoken to and broken through as I move through the rest of this show. Quick, fast, and in a hurry, hopefully. But yeah, think of that what you may. His G20 led him to Vietnam, which included him speaking out against China, but not really. I mean, he was supposed to be taking a stand, in a sense, against China, standing strong against China. But he mostly just complimented them. So that seems a bit counterproductive. Now, you don't exactly want to go laugh in the face of bullies or anything like that. At least not always. Time and a place for everything. But it did seem like he was walking on eggshells an awful lot until the moment when his staff cut him off mid-sentence and forced him to leave the stage. But he was ready for that. He was ready for bedtime, as he said moments before. So here is the White House transcript of his press conference from Vietnam, which was an absolute disaster. September 10, the day before the anniversary. That's right. So I'm definitely not going to read through all of this. It's hard to read, for one. But yeah, JW Marriott Hotel, Hanoi, Vietnam. Yeah. You can read it for yourself if you want. I need to check and see if his speech from Alaska is up on this White House website, because I would be interested to know if they left the portion in where he claimed falsely and accurately to have been on ground zero on 9/12. But yeah, at the end of this, things really fell apart for the president, the resident. He did state that he wanted to go to bed. He literally stated that on the world stage in a foreign country during a press conference in which he finally took several questions, but of course they were all from pre-selected questioners, journalists. He said if I could find it, that he wanted to go to bed. I'm trying to find it here. It is here somewhere. Assuming it was not erased by whoever edits these things. Miss Jean Pierre. This ends the press conference. Thanks, everyone. The president. Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, he was mid-sentence, and she cut him off and ran him off. But I'm looking for the part where he talks about how he's wanting to go to bed. I thought I saw it here when I was speed reading this last night. You know what? I gotta be sure. Let me pause my show. Alright, I just had to pause my recording momentarily. So up here, he said at one point, and let's see, I'm just following my orders here. Never a good thing to say, and yet he says it so much. You'd think he'd pick up on his own faulty talking points occasionally and put them down, never to pick them back up. But he just keeps putting this stuff out there for us. And the White House, for their part, they put it out there for us too. And as you can see here, Joe Biden said, but I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed. Well, he had one foot in the door, one foot out of the door as people continued to ask him questions, as journalists continued to attempt to ask him questions. And ultimately, he was cut off by his own staff, by his own press secretary. I am looking forward to the next press conference. I'm hoping some questions will be asked about this press conference and also about his claims in Alaska. And about that, I tweeted out some stuff, posted some stuff on X just yesterday, and I might play a couple of clips for you. Here is this. And Greg Price posted this as well. Joe Biden just completely lied about being at Ground Zero the day after 9/11. He was in D.C. The Senate convened on 9/12/01 to condemn the attack. And that's where he was.
To renew our sacred vow, never forget, never forget.
Notice how he says never forget, only to reveal that he has apparently forgotten, or is just a liar.
We never forget.
And by the way, if you forget and then make up something as though you didn't forget, you're still a liar.
Each of us, each of those precious lives stolen too soon when evil attacked. Ground Zero in New York, and I remember standing there the next day and looking at the building. I felt like I was looking through the gates of hell. It looked so devastating because from where you could stand.
I feel like the tone at the end changes a little bit and almost suggests that he knows that he's just making up stuff and now he's just trying to sound more convincing by throwing in a few extra details. Let me play that last part one more time.
Ground Zero in New York, and I remember standing there the next day.
Lies.
And looking at the building. I felt like I was looking through the gates of hell.
All right, trying to pack a punch now. Place some emphasis on the personal experience, which did not actually belong to him. Belonged to many people, but not to him.
It looked so devastating because from where you could stand.
Okay, so looking at his face, he's kind of looking around. I don't know if he's looking at the teleprompter at that point. The teleprompter teletubby he is. But, you know, I haven't seen this on the White House website. Even if it is listed in the transcript, that doesn't necessarily mean it was in the original speech. So that's what I would like to hear Karine Jean-Pierre question on. Like, was that part of his speech? His scripted speech? Or did he just make that up in the spur of the moment? I'm guessing he made it up in the spur of the moment. I mean, I would hope that nobody would lie on his behalf. But they will in the aftermath of his lying. So, yeah, Joe Biden reminds us to never forget. 9/11 and then moments later claimed he was at Ground Zero the next day. Joe must have forgotten that he was in D.C. on the Senate floor on September 12, 2001. There's the clip again. I'm not going to play that again. I'll pull this screenshot up. September 12, 2001, part of Senate session part 1. Yeah, so even the left-leaning fact-checking sites are fact-checking him on this, or at least Snopes is. And here's a clip from his speech on that day. Well, not on September 11, but on September 12, of course.
The senator is recognized.
Mr. President, I can't think of any other legislative body in the world
Sorry, the audio is low. I may not play all of this.
where you would hear the speech you just heard by the junior senator from Virginia.
No, I'm not going to play it because the audio is so low and I can't turn it up any louder. But that was tweeted out by Citizen Free Press, originally by the Post Millennial. Tweeted, posted, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. The beauty of social media here. Even if the actual news outlets won't fact check him, well, plenty of people will. As did Mazemore. More evidence of Joe Biden not being at Ground Zero as he claimed. So here is a clip which was posted by Mazemore. September 12, 2001, Biden and McCain hit the TV shows to start the push for war. Think of that what you may.
I believe there is absolute resolve on the part of you. For example, I was asked in an earlier program, would the American people support the use of ground forces if we determined exactly what the target was?
Classic question.
My answer is absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. This is a unprecedented attack upon the American people.
So there's 40 seconds left to that clip as well, but for the sake of time, I might just share a few thoughts and then move on. Yeah, I say think of that what you may because I'm not trying to talk about whether or not politicians were pushing for war at that point and or whether or not there was a reason to do so. I mean, something terrible had just happened, and clearly people had their concerns. I'm not saying that everyone in government was transparent about all of it. I'm not saying that at all, but I just don't want to get into conspiracy theories right now. All I'm trying to do is, well, I would say expose Joe Biden, but he's essentially exposing himself at this point. I'm just pointing it out. But I've been there for a while now, so this is no surprise to me. No surprise to me when he lies. And as you can see, as you can hear, he does it quite a bit. Here's another post in which I said, I feel like if Joe Biden isn't outright lying, he's instead unable to remember in the spur of the moment where he was after 9/11. So he simply pulls details out of thin air for the sake of pretend relatability. Either way, he's lying, and it will be interesting to hear how his propaganda secretary, KJP, Karine Jean-Pierre, will spin this. I haven't heard a press conference since the speech, so I might be reaching, but hopefully she will receive some questions about it, as well as on some of his other lies, which have, for example, a lot of examples provided, well, led to his impeachment inquiry, which is just around the corner, apparently. A lot of lies have led to that. This from Colin Rugg. Just in, during a speech in Anchorage, Alaska today, President Joe Biden claims he was at Ground Zero the day after 9/11. I remember standing there the next day. I felt like I was looking through the gates of hell. Here's Joe Biden giving a speech from the Senate floor on September 12, 2001, the day after 9/11. Is Joe Biden a liar, dumb, or both? Someone said both. He couldn't even make it through his press conference without getting cut off and sent away, as I already explained, and that was on the 10th, of course. Colin Rugg responded, international embarrassment. I would agree. Pathological liar. Maybe. Can you be both a pathological liar and so senile that you aren't even capable of, well, full cognitive capabilities required in being a pathological liar? I don't know. Things for a psychologist to think about, I suppose. I'm no expert on any particular matter, but these things matter to me. Play a little bit of this.
Constituency have died. Buildings in this state are still burning. And in the ultimate American way.
Audio is nicely leveled here. This is a 10-minute clip, though, so I'm not going to play it. But this is from his speech on the Senate floor.
He calls at the end of his speech for not abrogating the basic cherished liberties on any other assembly.
Skipping through.
But all those who have had their fellow citizens and their constituents. Time for resolve, but not remorse. A time for sober investigation and no recrimination. All is changed. All is changed for America. Way of life.
And listen, that's the epitome of a sad, solemn, somber, whatever other S word you want to use, occasion. I'm not trying to say that anything he said back then was disingenuous, but it is disingenuous when he redescribes the events which followed. So I'm no fan of the man on the basis of all of his lies and so many other issues. Here's a little video I put together. We've already seen part of this, but I'll play it one more time. Joe Biden's lie about standing on ground zero at New York City World Trade Center the day after 9/11.
Thank you, Chief Master Sergeant Miller, for that introduction and for your service to our nation. Governor Dunleavy, it's good to see you. Governor and I have something in common. We're both from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I wish I had him playing in my high school ball club when I was playing.
Yeah, that's the first thing he said when he went up to give his speech. I knew as he went up that he was about to tell a joke. I was like, he's about to tell a joke. And he told a joke. Not a very original joke. He puts various spins on this joke. And, well, many of his speeches. When he goes up, he looks out and sees a big guy in the front row or someone he's just talked to, someone in government, someone out of government, and then he'll talk about how they'd make a great linebacker or something like that.
But I could have been an All-American, have you in front of me. Each of us, each of those precious lives stolen too soon when
Agreed.
evil attacked. Ground Zero in New York, and I remember standing there the next day and looking at the building. I felt like I was looking through the gates of hell. It looked so devastating because from where you could stand.
Whoop. Exposed. And that's from the Snopes fact check. So no need to linger on that. What is this? I have some random stuff pulled up here. Oh, yes, Kamala Harris had a great time at the 9/11 memorial today. So she was sent in as the replacement for Joe Biden, and that may be a theme in the near future. We'll see. We'll see what happens in the 2024 election cycle. And speaking of Eric Adams, there he is, and there's Kamala Harris with the cackling laugh in her voice and a smile on her face as per usual. I saw some clips going around of like all the people in her vicinity just carrying on and laughing. Bad look. I'm not going to get too hung up on it. You know, so many years later, I imagine some people are going to tell some jokes at an event where they're all gathered together. We are gathered together to hear Kamala Harris cackle. I guess that's what it's all about. At least she's having fun. Have you seen the video of her dancing? That was amusing. The Babylon Bee said, Kamala Harris arrives at Ground Zero to give speech about January 6th. Satirical, but barely. Yeah. If that's what was being memorialized, well, Joe Biden would have been on a scene rather than in Alaska. And he was overseas, but he scheduled his travels in a very unformidable fashion. Traveling from the G Summit to Vietnam to Alaska. He could have reordered things. He had plenty of time to think about it, as they do every year. So it's clear to me that he wanted to break from tradition. And maybe he thought that as bad as Kamala Harris looked here and looks always, well, he would have looked even worse if he had been here trying to speak on the families of the victims of 9/11, and he had sounded like he sounded at that press conference in Vietnam the day before. But yes, as for Kamala Harris dancing, here is that. This is unconnected, but as Simon Atiba says, doing the business of the American people. Kindly rate Kamala Harris on her dancing skills as she hosts a party at her house to celebrate 50 years of hip-hop. And this was just days before 9/11. I don't know if this is going to get copywritten or has been copywritten, so I'm honestly surprised she's not twerking. All in today's twerk, right? This from Mediaite. Biden under fire after falsely claiming he was at Ground Zero the day after 9/11. His worst one yet? Article by Charlie Nash. I need to go back to work here in a few minutes, so I don't have time to go through all of these articles. I had quite a few pulled up, though. Let me see if there's anything I haven't already spoken on. The clip of the claim, people posting it, people such as Miranda Devine, RNC Research, Ted Cruz, Scott Walker, Dan McLaughlin, Carrie Lake, of course, who decided to celebrate Trump as per usual. And I'm not trying to make this about Donald Trump either, but he would have handled the situation much better, even if for the sake of pandering. You know, people like their publicity stunts. And that means that Joe Biden would have been better off just going. Even if he fumbled and mumbled his way through any speeches he had to make, or present, at least he would have been present. Would have been one less criticism for people. Of course, if he was going to lie, I guess it was better for him to do it from Alaska than in everyone's face in the state of New York. Does Joe Biden remember 9/11? That is a good question. Who published this? Besides the National Review. Noah Rothman. Joe Biden's unsettling lapses are doubtlessly coming with increasing frequency now. The latest occurred in Alaska, where the president and his administration have prioritized promoting a domestic policy initiative over commemorating the anniversary of September 11 attacks at one of the sites the terrorists targeted there. Biden said the following. And once again, the clip. Yada, 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 bing, bang, boom. On September 12, 2001, Joe Biden joined his fellow senators at the Capitol to debate a joint resolution condemning the terrorist attacks. From there, then New York Senator Hillary Clinton, who also participated in the debate, flew to New York City and visited Ground Zero alongside Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Biden did not join his colleague. Rather, that evening, the Delaware senator joined Charlie Rose via satellite from Washington, D.C. for a broader conversation about the terrorist threat. The validity of Biden's recollections about the view to which he was privy notwithstanding, it's unlikely that he formed these impressions when he said he did. Biden's instinct to personalize American tragedies in his effort to relate to them has become a rote feature of his public remarks. Yes, yes, yes. Whether he is engaging in fabulism or inventing memories from his past is a subject of debate. But September 11 isn't exactly a recent event, and the president should probably be able to summon at least a handful of genuine personal memories from the formative event. That is, if he is still capable of that kind of recall. I believe I was in the first grade in a small Christian school in Arkansas. I was only in school for my first 2 grades. After that, it was homeschool. But that was just before my family moved from Arkansas to Washington. And yes, I remember the news breaking while I was in school, and teachers brought everyone together and put the radio on for a little while, but some of us were kind of young, so I don't know that the radio stayed on for very long. My parents did drive me and my sister to my grandma's house afterward, and we saw some news bites on TV. My grandma's TV, she did have TV. Unlike me and my family for many of my younger years, well, we had rabbit ears along the way, but it was hard to pick up anything. But we were watching at my grandma's house, and some of the footage and the responses to what was happening by the people on the ground was a little bit traumatizing to me. I shouldn't say traumatizing, not in comparison to people who actually went through it, but I'm just saying, someone so young saying something that I didn't fully understand, and the responses, the reactions from the people who were there. You know, it's something that I won't forget, and it's not something that I would redescribe just for the sake of pretend relatability. But that's Joe Biden for you. There's also a Newsweek article here. Where was Joe Biden on the day after 9/11? President's story raises questions. I don't have time for this one. Slightly more lengthy article. I've seen a lot of clips going around about Donald Trump and things he has said about 9/11 over the years. And he is someone who was on the ground at the time helping out, you know. Donald Trump, the former president and frontrunner for the 2024 Republican presidential election, spoke with local network WWOR within hours of the 9/11 attacks. He said the Trump building, also known as 40 Wall Street, which he owned, was now the tallest building in downtown Manhattan after the World Trade Center had collapsed. In a statement released on Monday, Trump said, "We remember the 2,977 precious souls who were savagely taken from us on that morning 22 years ago, leaving a void that can never be filled." Solid statement, but not much is expected of him since he is the president currently. As for Joe Biden, well, Biden has also been criticized for marking the grim milestone in Alaska, the first time the president hasn't been at one of the attack sites or the White House on the 9/11 anniversary. He was returning from a G20 meeting in India, while First Lady Jill Biden laid a wreath by the 9/11 memorial at the Pentagon. There's more to that article, but I don't have time to articulate. Watch. Biden claims without evidence he was at Ground Zero on the day after 9/11 attacks. Records of Senate proceedings show Biden was in Washington, D.C. on September 12, 2001. I might use this as a thumbnail, actually. Let me pause for a moment. Where should I look for the sake of the thumbnail? I guess I should probably look at the camera, so took care of that. Take care of this article from the New York Post. Biden claims he was at Ground Zero day after 9/11, but his own book puts him in D.C. Okay, this is interesting and seems to provide some additional information. I don't know that I have time for this, but let me try. See if I don't swing and miss. President Biden said Monday that he was at the World Trade Center site in New York City one day after the 9/11 attacks, despite his own autobiography placing him in D.C. The 80-year-old president also claimed he saw the fireball caused by the plane that struck the Pentagon in Northern Virginia from Washington's Union Station, when his own book says he merely saw a bronze haze of smoke. Oh, wow. Well, that might be a distinction without much of a difference. Fireball versus a brown haze of smoke. Reminds me of his kitchen fire story, right? He describes it as his house practically burning down with his wife inside. He nearly lost his wife, his Corvette, and his cat. Thought Trump was the exaggerator in chief. What about Biden? Ground Zero in New York. I remember standing there the next day and looking at the building, and I felt like I was looking through the gates of hell. Biden told U.S. troops in Anchorage, Alaska on the 22nd. Yeah, the 22nd anniversary of the terrorist attacks. It looked so devastating because the way you could, from where you could stand. Okay, that's confusing. At least say it correctly. If you're not going to say it correctly, at least say it correctly. If that makes sense. Yeah. I spent many 9/11s in those hollow grounds to bear witness and remember those we lost, he went on. Moments later, the president claimed that he saw the imminent aftermath of American Airlines Flight 77 striking the Pentagon. So is this jumping back and forth between his autobiography and his speech? The plume of fire that shot up in the sky in Pentagon, I remember seeing as I got off the Amtrak train on my way to work in the United States Senate, Biden mused. Oh, don't get him started talking about his Amtrak adventures. And Mr. Joey Baby. You picking up what I'm putting down? And the president's 2007 autobiography, Promises to Keep, gives a different account of his actions on 9/11 and the day that followed. Biden wrote that he arrived in Washington on the morning of September 11, 2001, after American Airlines Flight 77 struck the Pentagon, and I could see a brown haze of smoke hanging in the otherwise crystal clear sky beyond the Capitol dome. He wrote in the book, I headed back to the Capitol the next morning, September 12, 2001. The book doesn't describe any trip to Ground Zero, much less on the day after the attacks, as search and rescue work was ongoing, despite describing Biden speaking to University of Delaware students on September 19, 2001, and visiting a mosque in Newark, New Jersey 2 days after that. A Gannett Newswire report from September 12, 2001 began. Delaware Senator Joe Biden spent Wednesday exactly where he wanted, in the U.S. Senate. C-SPAN footage shows that Biden gave a speech. There's a link to that. 2 days later, then President George W. Bush visited the former site of the Twin Towers, where he spoke to workers from a bullhorn and famously said, I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon. And I have heard those statements before. So essentially, Joe Biden claimed that he was there even before the president. There are some photos here, but oh man, there's a lot to this article, and I just don't have time to read any further or react any further. One random thing I'll show you just because I had it pulled up. Since George W. Bush was mentioned. Does anyone else think it's weird that Jeffrey Epstein had a painting of George Bush playing with paper airplanes sitting in front of two collapsed Jenga towers? Yeah, true story. Just like Jeffrey Epstein had a picture, a painting of Bill Clinton in a dress. Have you seen that one? Also weird. But yes, I'm not sure what this means, what the political or ideological implications are of this. Interesting stuff, though. Slightly disturbing stuff. But thanks for watching. Keep in touch. Keep in tune. New content is coming soon. One more time. I didn't mean to show you George Bush one more time. One more time. And I'm out.